Welcome back to Roots and Relevance. We are on episode 2 of our new series on Esther. And last time we just did sort of an introduction and kind of set the groundwork. Riley, you weren't here, so I want to get you on record.
Appreciate it.
As well. So like a very quick, 3-minute recap of the first episode. We talked a lot about genre. And if I remember correctly, there's a lot of arguing between Jonathan and Wally. And
I showed myself to be right again and Jonathan to be wrong.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but I only asked the question and never answered myself. So
yes.
So one of the things we said, though, is how you look at the Book of Esther matters, right? In that you're going to look at it very differently based on the genre that you think it is. So folks at home or listeners will know, I think it'd be good for us to just kind of state where each of us is coming from. And again, if you're new to the podcast, we like actually coming from different perspectives. It provides some very lively discussions and hopefully gives you just some different angles as well. So who wants to start? Who's going to go on the record and say this
Jonathan.
is the genre that I think this is, the type of book?
I think they're probably real people put in a hyperbolic description and imagery and scenery, and not quite sure how accurate that the story is to reality, but doesn't say anything less about what Yahweh's trying to say in the Book of Esther.
Oh, Jonathan's answers remind me that the follow-up question was also, when did you lose your salvation? I kid. All right, no, that's good.
What silliness do y'all have to say?
Well, I believe it's historical narrative. I believe the events happen. I believe the people happen. I believe it happened as it is stated in Scripture.
Boom.
Just like there were 127.
Yes.
All the numbers are correct.
Yes.
Even though there's no
when
way
the
that
Bible
historically you
speaks
can
to historical events, it speaks truthfully and accurately.
All right. And Riley.
So you believe a 7-day creation?
Oh, here we go.
You believe a 7-day creation?
That's a discussion for another time.
We already talked about this, if I remember correctly.
That's a discussion for another time.
He's changed his tune, because that one wasn't accurate, but the 127 is accurate.
Oh, I see what he did there.
That's what he needs to say.
I see what he did there. All right, Riley.
Anyway, historical narrative all the way.
Okay, so same thing.
Yeah.
A number is a number.
Yeah.
Number's a number. Everything happened just like they said.
Yeah.
All right.
The camcorder was recording.
I mean, sure. That doesn't mean there's not truths that are deeper than what's recorded on the camcorder, but I think that the baseline of the story is true.
But the underlying things below the surface doesn't deny or negate what is on the surface.
Correct.
All right.
Well, that's fine and good. That's not what the question was. Did the story happen the way it did?
Yeah, I answered that question too, and the answer is yes.
but
Historical narrative.
You're talking about underlying meanings. We're not there yet. We're talking
No,
about surface level.
Okay, you're just being cantankerous this morning.
And that's different from when?
I was going to say, how's that different from?
I'm just trying to
All right,
clarify
Tim,
your
it's
answer,
Tim's
that's all.
turn. It's Tim's turn now.
So I'm going to say that this is a very similar book to the Book of Jonah, in that the question itself lends itself to immediately the questions that we go to, which is did it happen exactly this way? And again, I think for me personally, the highest way to take Scripture, the way to elevate Scripture to the highest possible place, is to take it in the way that the original hearers and listeners would have heard it and listened to. And the fact is, when they heard or listened to this, it would have been their story for how the Jewish festival of Purim started. And it was a story they reenacted with skits and sketches, even during the holiday. And just like we said in Jonah, these are events that happened in some way, shape, or form. And there's a reenactment, a retelling of the story, similar to maybe the way Saturday Night Live might do a sketch about reality, where they're exaggerating certain parts or highlighting certain points that they might not if it's just historical narrative. So I would say, it's a story that happened, but I don't know. I think the numbers in Eastern like thought meant something different than it does in Western thought. And so I think 7 does mean 7, but from an Eastern point of view, not a Western point of view. So that'll be some good discussion as we go through.
Good fodder.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to do it a little different than we've done in the past. We're going to just kind of go through the book and let relevance come up as it does, and talk about each section. And so if somebody has Esther chapter 1, we're going to start with the first 9 verses. And then I want to hear what you think about this first part.
Now it took place in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces. In those days, as King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne, which was at the citadel in Susa, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his princes and attendants, the army officers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of his province being in his presence. And he displayed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor of his great majesty for many days, 180 days. When these days were completed, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days for all the people who were present at the citadel in Susa, from the greatest to the least, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were hangings of fine white and violet linen held by the cords of fine purple linen on silver rings and marble columns, and couches of gold and silver on mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. Drinks were served in golden vessels of various kinds, and the royal wine was plentiful according to the king's bounty. The drinking was done according to the law. There was no compulsion, for the king had given orders to each official of his household that he should do according to the desires of each person. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the palace which belonged to King Ahasuerus.
All right. Lots in those first 9 verses. By the way, the last verse, Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women of King Ahasuerus' palace, or King Xerxes' palace. You know what immediately came to my mind? Because we're all either Baptist or ex-Baptist. No, like how we used to, every time we'd go to like a Southern Baptist like conference, I would bring my team like from New Jersey, like the church, and it would be like our ministry team. And we'd go to the registration table, and our women leaders would come up and they'd be like, "Oh, welcome. Okay, your section is downstairs, and you're going to learn how like you can best support your husbands." That happened at least once I can think of, and there were smaller iterations of that twice, but that's what that reminded me of. Like, okay, there's this huge banquet going on. All the men are doing their thing, and Queen Vashti is doing the Baptist like support group, like in the other side of the palace. Sorry, that was my little side note. So, on a more serious note, what comes up for you in this first section?
So, do you think the party is real?
Yes.
The party?
This celebration, this banquet, is it a real banquet for 180 days, or at least it lasted 6 months? Yeah,
I think actually some of the archaeology that's come up recently, I say recently, like in the last 100 years, actually supports the 180-day banquet, because critical scholars used to say, well, there's a great example of why this is a great act of fiction, because nobody would have a 180-day banquet. And they've actually found Persians did have, really, really long banquets.
Well, also, if you look at the historical timing of all of this is happening in the 3rd year of his reign. He's about to, in a couple years, invade Greece. So it's very likely that this could be like a fundraising event, like get support for my big military invasion to avenge my dad and his losses, so I can go in and be the hero and take all the glory in Greece for myself.
Yeah, in fact, to go along with what you're saying, one commentator I read said that this could have been almost like the equivalent to like our military parade,
Mhm.
because he was like showing like all his power. Not that like our country would ever do something crazy like a military parade and have tanks, going
Hey,
down
it's
the
the
street.
250th anniversary of the founding of the Army.
Oh yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
That's what that was.
Nothing
It
wrong
just
with
happened.
that.
It happened. Hey, just like Esther, it happened to be on the president's birthday.
Hey, coincidences.
Yeah, coincidences, or was it the providence of God?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So yeah, I think that is what he's doing there. Is he's showing off.
Well, I think
power.
there's more there too. First of all, I love the name Xerxes, what it means in the Persian. You know what Xerxes means in the Persian?
Oh, I don't know, but just to clarify, Xerxes is the same as King.
Ahasuerus.
Correct.
Yes.
So like, don't be confused if you're like, wait a minute, are we talking about two kings?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, Xerxes is Ahasuerus, and it's Xerxes in Persian means king of heroes. Isn't that awesome?
Oh wow, King of Heroes. It sounds like a cheesy Hillsong
But
worship song.
That's it.
You are my king of heroes.
Oh my God. But how spectacular. It's not King of Kings or it's King of Heroes. But anyway, I thought that was
No, I
pretty
like that. I like
cool.
that.
So he comes to power, this is the 3rd year of his reign. So he came to power in 486, right? He's in the year prior to this party or this banquet, he's already had an uprising in Egypt, and he's had an uprising in Babylon that he's had to squash. So he's had these fires across this large that goes from his kingdom goes from Ethiopia to India.
Right.
So he's had all these fires, and he's getting pressure internally to be able to get revenge on his father, his father's loss at Battle Marathon against Greece. And he's getting internal pressure to attack Greece again. So this is a major, major PR. And also, his armies are there, right? I mean, he's got these satraps and precepts and all these from the 127 provinces, but he's also got his army there. He is doing a little PR stunt to say, hey, I've got military might, I got strength, I have the authority to lead, and I'm going to be asking you to help me to fulfill this mission that I have to attack Greece. And he's wooing these leaders to be able to come alongside and support financially and also send troops and things to. So this is I believe, if you look at the timetable and with everything that was happening in the kingdom in 484, and now at 483, he throws this banquet. It lines up perfectly with what historical events say could have happened and how a king would want to respond in the midst of these things.
So one of the things go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I was just going to say that was really, really good if it's true. There's plenty of there's commentaries that I have read that said, well, the third year doesn't mean actually when he was in his reign. Is actually his first year is 485, and none of this has actually ever happened.
Well, they're wrong.
Just a mix. I got it. I understand. This has nothing to do with the military. This has to do with marriage between Vashti. Y'all, how are we calling it? How are we going to do these names?
Vashti.
Vashti.
That's the southern pronunciation. Vashti.
Yeah. So they're saying this could possibly be the marriage of Vashti. I guess my question is, does it really matter why he's having this banquet? Is this opulent banquet the way it's described, just the way that maybe the writer would have been making fun of this Persian wealth and luxury and traffics?
I mean, that was kind of my follow-up question for all of you, because one of the things, hopefully, that if you've listened to us for long, you know that we've talked about that in especially the Hebrew and the Old Testament scriptures, like there's not a word that is there like on accident, right? Like everything is packed with meaning and it's sparse. And so whenever it goes into deep description on something, we need to pay attention because something is going on there. And even just hearing Riley read that again, you see purple linen cords, marble columns, gold, silver, mother of pearl, precious stones, drinks in golden goblets. Like, it's going out of the way to point out this is like the set of a TBN, for those of you that remember Trinity Broadcasting Network, with all the gold, like opulent things. That's what this is like. Why is the writer going to so much trouble to show, hey, this is a like rich thing happening?
Because I think he's making a parody of the Persian Empire. I mean, I think if you look at when probably this was written after the oral tradition, this was not something that would be so different than how other Greek writers would have been describing the Persian Empire.
So making fun of it?
Yeah. And well, I don't know much making fun of it, but maybe being exaggerated about how wealthy or luxurious they really did, these long banquets, all the drinking and all the whatever. I think this is not outside of what contemporary writers would have been doing with other biblical narratives about how they would describe the Persian Empire as this, not focused, not disciplined. They're just out there drinking and all this.
Is this, I've been watching Andor again on Disney.
So good.
Is this set up okay, there's the Empire, right? And then like the Jews are the rebels. It's giving me that vibe because the Empire, they're powerful, they're rich.
Well, I tend to think that it makes perfect sense in light of historical context, especially with his kingship, to put forth a banquet of this grandeur and the stature in order to prove he's in control, in order to prove the grandiosity of the Persian Empire. We see this today in modern context with countries throwing lavish extravaganzas for visiting dignitaries from other countries. I mean, it just makes sense. You just want to show off your best. I mean, and
Well,
so
but I'm sorry. Go
I mean, I don't think it's exaggeration. I think you do what you can to show off in front of others if you're hoping to get them on board with what you're doing. I mean, anyway,
Yeah.
I just
Jonathan, what were you going to say?
lost my train of thought. Now.
Riley, what were you
Actually
gonna
kept
say?
that's
talking
what
too fast
truth
right now.
does. Draw.
Well, I was going to say, especially when you're going into a war where you absolutely get smashed by the Greeks by the end of it. So,
Right.
Yeah, but y'all, there's nothing mentioning of war here. This understand where the time period is, and understand what his dad couldn't do and what he couldn't do eventually. But I mean, to me, this is the narrator, the writer, trying to show, and this is very important for me, that it's not some historical book he's trying to write here. He's trying to make a farce on what the Persians do and how God, Yahweh, still will bring the least of those to show his greatness and his power. And he's setting it up in the first page to say, this king acts like he's this big, but he's not. He can't even make a decision. Over and over, he never makes a decision. A decision is made for him by both his whatever, the courtiers and Esther and Mordecai and Haman. They're all making decisions for him. There is no power that he's been given in this book at all.
You know,
In fact, he's kind of this weak.
it's funny, like you're talking about what he projects versus what he really is. And then in verse 8, did that strike you guys as like odd, like such an odd decree, telling them, okay, there are now no restrictions? It's like this banquet that there's drunkenness like all the time, right? It'd be like going into a bar around here at like 11 o'clock on a Friday night, getting on the mic and going, have an announcement. Drinking is allowed.
Well, did you want to say something?
you were on
No,
the
you
track,
go
but under Persian custom, if the king were to be drinking, everyone was supposed to drink whenever the king drank. And so to have the phrase, they were under no compulsion, he said, well, that rule, that's not relevant. Just drink if you want to, whatever you want. That's on you. You don't have to drink when I drink. You don't have to get drunk
Again,
like me.
he doesn't want to alienate any of these satraps and governors by stupid things like rules that you have to drink when I drink. Maybe there's some that, maybe there's some cultures that are not big in drinking. Maybe they don't think about those things. Maybe it's not right for them to get drunk. So he's not trying to alienate anybody by making them go by the normal rules of decorum in these Persian parties.
And as for the characterization of Xerxes in Esther, as like you were talking about, Jonathan, I feel like the historical characterization of him is just the same. Like when he's in the invasion of Greece, historically speaking, he does this thing where he builds a big bridge of boats to get across the whatever sea it is. And when he's doing this, like a big storm comes up and all the boats are absolutely destroyed. And Xerxes, instead of being like, oh, like I couldn't have stopped this, whatever, he's like, no, we're gonna punish the sea because the sea should have obeyed me. He should have known what I was doing, and so I'm gonna chain him and whip the sea. No, that's not how that works. He's not. I mean, he's not stupid, but he's also very, very much wants to project his power however he can, and this is just another instance of that happening.
That's great. And I just want to quickly point out, this is a great example, right, of what you think about the genre matters, right? Because if you think it's primarily a satire or, what was that term that Adele Berlin uses, Jonathan? Not satire, it's something else. Like it was something.
He calls it
she.
He calls it a. Is it Adele or she?
Adele is a she, and she's not happy about it, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Not happy about you
Adele's a
calling
she.
her
I
a
was just
he.
saying, you called
Sorry,
her.
let
You
me
called her a
clarify
guy.
that.
There's some misogyny going on right there.
I invited her to the podcast, and I was like, man, I hope she doesn't listen to the first. I really did. I hope she didn't listen to the first one and be like, I'm not going on there.
I thought we were talking about Adele the singer for the first little bit. So.
Oh my God.
But
all right, did you ask me a question? I can't remember.
I was asking what her word for. She had a different word than satire. It was like, was it
Burlesque.
burlesque? That's what it was.
Actually, she calls it a farce in a way. It's
Right.
It's
right.
a burlesque, and there's a definition of farce she gives.
And the commentators that like went along with that, they'll say that is again meant to show the juxtaposition between like all this opulence and power versus what he really has. And then
Well,
I love the historical context that you guys give too. It's like it
Yeah,
depends
Very
on,
factual, baby.
well, no, but this is my point. I understand where Wally and probably Riley are going to be going through this whole book. Is like they're going to try to prove historically.
I don't have to prove
I don't have to
anything.
prove anything. It's just
right there in the narrative.
and it's so,
Methinks you protest too much. If I was to finish, what I was going to say was, Matt, you just completely lost my train of thought again. You interrupted. No, what I was trying to say is that I don't think it's all this historical stuff that's going on. I really do believe that we're trying to put a juxtaposition between the opulence, the Persians, and the focus, conservative posture of the Jewish people. And you get this, I think the word is dot. That's the word for law here. The rule, or in this case, I think the decree, it's used all the way throughout this book. And I think there's something there that we can track to show that sometimes what the king says is a rule is now no longer a rule. And here we have a rule that's in place of which he's saying, but we're not going to enforce that rule. It's really not a rule. And then Haman's is a rule, but now it's not going to become a rule because Mordecai's is going to be the rule, or Esther's is going to be the rule. So I think there's a lot going on here about the law and the rule and how we're looking at how that little line runs through the whole book of the scrolls.
reversals.
Well, also, I find it interesting that they note that Queen Vashti, like you said, Tim, is giving a separate banquet,
the Baptist
which
women's
is
group.
which is not normal for Persian culture anyway. Usually, you don't have these separate men and women banquets. You have it all together, men and women, in this banquet. And here we have this. So Vashti would have been present had she not been, which is a huge aspect of what we're going to talk about in the next section, right? Vashti would have been there present at the banquet. Everybody would have seen her. She hasn't been there. And all of a sudden, Vashti is asked to come where she would have been there normally had she had been a part of the normal proceedings of the banqueting, I don't know, culture or what is
Are you
norms.
saying that Vashti was doing something she wasn't supposed to?
No, I'm
Okay.
saying that she's doing something different than what normally would happen.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
why
Well, but
why was
let me-
even there a separate banquet? I mean,
Well-
that's another thing. Is that a coincidence or is that a sovereignty thing? You know, what's
I
going
can
on
answer
there?
that question.
Yes.
Because
What did
Plutarch-
Adele say?
Plutarch writes this: the lawful wives of the Persian kings sit beside them at dinner and eat with them. But when the kings wish to be married and get drunk, they send their wives out and send them for dancing girls and concubines. They are right in what they do because they do not concede and share any share in their licentiousness and debauchery to their wedded wives. So when the thing starts getting wild, they send their wives out, and then the wives do their own thing because they don't want what would happen with a bunch of drunk men around.
Interesting.
And so
That's
then
good.
she has her own, but they go on to say that she has her own party, feast, festival, banquet. And normally she would have that in the confines of their section of the palace. But in this case, she's having it in the open court, actually out there where everybody could be there. And it's really interesting. And I don't know what difference that makes for the whole story and what the line of the story is about. But I think there's an answer, Wally, is that I think that's what's so funny here, because we get to Vashti not obeying her husband. It's like her husband should have never asked her to come back in, because kind of breaks a custom or a thought or another law, a rule of wedded wives do not come in with a bunch of drunk men.
Interesting.
That's a good point. I never heard
And
that before.
Plutarch was when? I should know this. Like when, like date wise, are we talking? I mean, I know he wasn't 1985, but I don't.
140.
100
Is that
Ish.
BC or AD?
I don't know.
He's
Okay.
Middle Ages. I
Okay.
think.
He's Roman, right? Plutarch's Roman historian.
So that's what he writes in his Moralia book, Advice to Bride and Groom.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've milked verses 1 through 9 a lot for all it's worth, and so we're a little behind. That's all right. We're going to take it as it goes. Let's do. I'm going to read verses 10 through 12, and that's, even though it's just 3 verses, there's a lot here.
Oh, I can't wait till you read these names.
By the way, the way that you read names, it's as long as you do it with confidence, nobody knows.
Really fast and with confidence. Nobody will ever question.
On the 7th day, when the king was feeling good from the wine, amen, Xerxes commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abigatha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who personally served him, to bring Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command that was delivered by his eunuchs. The king became furious and his anger burned within him. What do you got?
Well, I just already gave my answer to that, so I'll let you hear what y'all like to say.
I don't know. Riley, what do you have to say?
I don't know. This scene always makes me think of the scene from Beauty and the Beast when Belle refuses to go to dinner with the Beast and he gets really angry and starts
Oh.
throwing things.
I've not thought about that. That's
Yeah,
pretty close.
every time I read it, I'm like, wow, yeah. I mean, I don't know what you want in terms of thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I mean, I think the biggest thing to point out here is that this is the thing. Like if you think about a big row of dominoes, this is really the first domino, right? Like when she stands up and says, I won't do it. And this is what's really interesting is actually to look at like a history of interpretation, because early interpretations of this in highly patriarchal societies would look at that as Vashti is not being good. Like she's not doing what she's supposed to. And then of course that's changed, I believe, in a much more healthy way to go, no, actually she did, this was a form of protest that was kind of a defense of her dignity. And it was actually a very noble thing for her to do. So I'm curious, like, how do you take it as like, whenever you look at narrative is not saying you have to do this. It's just telling the story. But as we read the story, do you think Vashti is there for us to look and go, man, she was, didn't do what she was supposed to in that culture? Or should we look at her and go, she stood up and did what was right?
Well, I don't think that the author takes a side as to whether it's a good or bad decision, because there's not a reason that's given for her refusal.
I mean, the author doesn't give sides on anything.
Exactly. So it's more like it's almost like not that her reason is irrelevant to her and her time period, but that for the overarching narrative of the story, what's important is that Xerxes expects to be obeyed no matter what, and any refusal on that has dangerous consequences.
Right.
But we will find out later what it means. There's consequences to come into the presence without being summoned, right?
Yeah.
That if I come into his presence without being summoned, then it could lead to my death. I don't know if there's any regulations to say what happens when the king orders you to do something, you don't do it in public. Was she fearful of death? Evidently, I don't think she was, or she would have probably come, I would think.
Yeah. To be honest, like if you're reading it for the first time, that might be a surprise for you that it didn't end in death. It actually just meant
he's
banishment.
He's trying to figure out what to do with her in the next section, right? What do we do with this? What do we do with this woman? A long time ago at a college conference that he had at a church I served at in Kentucky, Dr. Emmanuel McCall, who was one of the first African-American professors at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, was preaching, and he was preaching out of Esther, and one of the titles was "Let's Hear It for Vashti," and sort of going along with the lines that you were thinking, that she's saying I'm not an object, I'm a person, I have dignity, I have all these things that are beyond my beauty, that's not just for you to show off whenever you want.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we could see we could probably read modern day motives into those things as Vashti, but it could just be that God just said, no, I just don't want you to go. And so she goes, all right, I'm not going to go. Not that it actually says that, but I think it could be a possibility. So,
So I think we also go to the literary element here. So we talked about the chiastic structure.
What's
events,
chiastic?
That we have events in this case set up in a certain way that in this case are offset to each other. They're actually dissonant to each other. You got the rise of Haman through all these supernatural sovereign things, and then you have the rise of Mordecai. And so, we're going to have this exact situation with what Wally's already mentioned, with Esther coming against the rule to go before the king and face death. And then you've got Vashti, who I believe the Xerxes, I say Ahasuerus.
Ahasuerus.
Do you have Ahasuerus, I believe, breaking moral code, asking his wedded wife to come in with a bunch of drunken men, potentially just wearing a diadem on her head and nothing else. And so
she was actually following the law then, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying that she would have been more customarily answering what should not have happened. She was correcting correcting her stupid drunk husband, as in Nabal and Abigail. If you
Right.
remember the Nabal and
Yeah.
Abigail story, it's a very similar story. It's like her husband's being obstinate, gets her drunk, and then Abigail does what's right. In this case, we don't know what happens to Vashti. It really is no concern. We don't know if she was killed, whether she was sent off, what happens. She just kind of disappears. What happens to the disobedient act, according to that she chose not to come in, was there's this ridiculous edict that goes out there because now all the men of Persia are going to be scared that their wives are going to be, disobedient.
Yes.
Oh,
to them.
hold on. That's in the
Yes.
next section.
I know, but my point being, to go to what happened to Vashti, I don't think it makes a difference to the story. I think it's there for the story, and I'll underline story, maybe not event, for them to see we have a Persian woman doing the right thing. We have a Jewish woman not doing the right thing by marrying a Gentile and then breaking their own law. And here the king gets upset about the Persian wife doing the right thing, but it's okay for the Jewish person doing the wrong thing. I think it's very interesting, the tension there of what the narrator's doing.
So it's setting up, right? It's setting up the next section. And how does Esther become queen?
Right.
Right.
And
It's a needed element. We got to have Vashti leave before Esther can come
That's
home.
right.
And if you're seeing a lot of reversals already, that's the point, right? That theme of reversal. I mean, there's a big arc, going back to what Jonathan said earlier, the chiastic structure. The whole thing is a chiasm that points to the middle, and it's about reversal after reversal. And so I think that's great. Wally, do you mind reading verses 13 through 22, and we'll look at the last section?
All right. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for this was the king's procedure toward all who were versed in law and judgment, the men next to him being Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Merez, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom, according to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she has not performed the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs. How far do I go?
All the way to the end.
Oh, okay. Then Memucan said in the presence of the king and the officials, not only against the king has Queen Vashti done wrong, but also against all the officials and all the peoples who are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day the noble women of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's behavior, will say the same to all the king's officials, and there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. If it please the king, let a royal order go out from it, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be repealed, that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all his kingdom, for it is vast, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike. Amen. This advice pleased the king and princes, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, that every man be master of his own household and speak according to the language of his people.
Oh man, I can already feel the tension in the room. This one's going to be
Yeah,
great. This is, I mean, we'll get to a lot of these, but this is one of those that you read 10 different commentators and you're going to get 10 different takes from like all sides of the spectrum. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see, like, do you read this and are you supposed to go, yeah, that makes total sense? Are you supposed to read this and go, this is a ridiculous like advice?
So Queen Vashti's refusal to come before the king in the midst of this party is now a national threat. Is that what you're reading?
Yeah.
I mean, you're reading
You're
that?
the one that said this is historical narrative.
I'm just saying. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, for some reason, this has become a national crisis.
I mean, can you imagine women having the dignity to think for themselves? Like, how
gosh.
awful is that?
Terrible.
Like,
But no, I want to go back to this point though.
Yeah.
Don't you believe this is exaggerated narrative at this point.
No, I mean, people believe all sorts of crazy things today. Like stuff on the Babylon Bee looks like real life now. Like this,
But
it's
here,
totally plausible
but
to me.
I think if go ahead.
Let me respond. Let me respond.
Go, okay.
So this is the king that was throwing a 180-day military crash so he could prove his power among all the people. And he's about to go take down Greece. All right. He's scared that because his wife wouldn't come into a party, he's going to do a royal decree to say, oh my gosh, I'm scared that all these women are going to go against us now. How ridiculous is that?
Slippery
There
slope.
can't possibly be any historicity to this at all.
I mean, let's put it in a modern day context. Let's just say we have a president that is uber masculine.
I was going to say, I can't read this without thinking of certain people.
That is dealing with major foreign affair crisis, that wants to project strength and power and authority. And a story comes out that he asked his wife to do something and she refused flat out to do it. You don't think that'd be there? Then there's certain.
I think this is. I think you're trying to put something in modern.
I think I'm putting things in a historical context that makes sense.
Second, you just said that how strong he was, and now he's scared because his wife was in.
I didn't say. I'm saying he's projecting strength. I'm saying he's trying to project strength. I didn't say he was strong. I say he's trying to project strength.
Put her head off right in front of you. That's projecting strength. Not doing an edict where there's nothing that pronounces what happens to her.
Well,
here's something against.
No. Okay, go finish. Let me straighten you out.
Do something against Vashti. Don't start the whole Persian Empire on this stupid edict law that's now an actual disaster.
He's not. It's just not an individual event between he and his wife. It is now he's trying to project national strength. So now he's making not just a decree against Vashti, but now he's making a kingdom-wide decree to exert his strength and influence within this culture, saying that I'm in control.
Wait, so you actually think it projects strength, not fragility? Like when I read this, I think this projects a strong man, like a dictator that thinks he's all that, but exposes his fragility.
Absolutely, but he's trying to protect that by projecting strength.
That strong man.
Let's read verse 20. The decree the king issues will be heard throughout his vast kingdom.
That's not true.
But who brought up this little decree? Whose idea was this?
It was the men.
It wasn't even his. He couldn't make a decision for himself.
Well, his idea to invade Greece wasn't even his. It was his brother-in-law's. He didn't even want to do that. He's an easily swayed man.
Oh my God!
Go ahead.
I can tell I've hit a nerve because y'all won't let me talk. Mamunkin comes up with this concept that he says, "Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go do that." That's not strength at all. That's absolutely fragility.
But the people wouldn't know that.
I'm not saying that he was strong. I'm saying he's trying to project strength. There's a difference. Usually, people that are insecure overcompensate and try to project what they are not. And I think this is what's happening to Ahasuerus. He's trying to project strength, and now he's so insecure, he sees this little incident between he and his wife is now a threat to his kingdom authority. And so now he's making it a kingdom authority issue by projecting, by making this declaration to go across this kingdom.
So
let's say you're right. Let's say you're right and you're not. Let's say you are lying. What does this got to do with the theme of the book, of the scroll here? That's what I'm trying to see. You're trying to make this historical. We're trying to describe Xerxes here, what he's about to do with Greece and all this other stuff. This got nothing to do with this book. This book has nothing to do with about what he's about to do with Greece. This is about something completely different. One, the establishment of Purim. What does that scene that you're talking about have anything to do with what the narrator and writer is doing in this book?
I'm just saying, I'm giving the historical context behind Xerxes. Xerxes is just a bit player in what God is doing here in this book, but it's also showing the realities that are at play in historical contexts behind this book. I'm not saying that Xerxes and this banquet have any significant thing other than he's trying to show power, he's trying to show strength, he's trying to show off, and then as part of that, he's ordered his queen to come in. She refuses, and now it becomes a national crisis for him. Why? Because he's weak and insecure. I think all these things can be true. I don't think that him invading Greece has anything to do with his book, but it has something to do with the context of why he's throwing this party, personally.
Okay, my last comment, and I'm not going to be quiet on this. Yeah. I think why what you're doing, my concern of what you're doing is you're looking over the story and what the narrator is saying to prove something historical. That's all I'm trying to say.
No,
I
I'm
think
not
if we
trying to
could get
prove
past-
anything historical. I'm just trying to say that these
Yeah,
things
you
are
are. That's all you're
historical
talking about.
realities.
That's
So,
right, because you're talking about how Xerxes is this and Xerxes that. How about we look past Xerxes and look to what the story says about this king and what he's doing, about the laws, and they're never going to be undone, but now they're all undone. And what a Greek writer might have looked at the Persian Empire a couple hundred years before. That's all I'm trying to say.
I'm just saying that the historical narrative that we like outside of the Bible is confirmed by the biblical account of Xerxes. They match
disagree.
up. They are the same.
Completely
So,
disagree with that, but that's fine.
and I'm just going to, again, for me, if I think if someone from the original audience heard the conversation, they'd be like, what are you guys talking about? It's a story that has meaning. And I think they like
That's
the
right.
wrestling over like the historicity of it. Either way, wherever you fall isn't the main point. Because let me kind of like follow that up with the fact that I think we all agree that beyond the historicity, this command was unenforceable for the most part. It was like ridiculous. Tim Mackey calls it like a very silly command. And I think no matter what, we're meant to see that this is a bizarre thing to be happening. By the way, one thing that I thought was interesting, we do have so much that does back up the historicity, but, and I'm welcome to be wrong on this. So show me if this is not true. We do have a lot of instances of Persian law that we found. And this idea that there were irrevocable laws, which is going to become a really important theme in this book, that was never found in Persian culture, this idea of an irrevocable law. So some people will say this is meant to be, part of the exaggeration as well. So I don't know. Again, tell me if I'm wrong on that, but
I don't know. I haven't done much research.
okay.
on it,
All
so
right. That's fair.
That's fair. I'm gonna just,
Yeah.
I think you're right on that, Tim.
Well,
I'm sure you should.
and the other, like the
Which
last
is truth.
the other funny thing to me is that like his stated goal is that all women will give honor to their husbands. And it's just also very ironic, right? That in this whole shenanigan, he literally has lost his wife. And he's like saying, this is, the goal is nuclear families. I want the family to be strong as I kick
you mean
my wife out.
You mean to tell me in this culture, women are not already supposed to be doing that anyway?
Totally. Yeah, no.
It's
yeah.
just-
Exactly. So why have to eat it?
Well, I make an edict
Right.
that
Yeah,
culture
I make an
says
edict.
you're supposed to do this
So
anyway.
I would argue that's the second edict in one chapter where the king says something that's just already happening. But again, that's I know
He is reacting to events. He's not moving events in any way. He's not ahead of events.
well, this has been fun. I knew it would be, and it's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and we will be back next week, and we will get into chapter 2 of the Scroll of Esther. Have a good week, everyone.